Welcome back to State of the Union. I'm Jake Tapper. We have some breaking news for you now. The Biden administration is asking Israel to delay its ground incursion into Gaza. That's according to two sources briefed on discussions who say that the delay would potentially allow for both more negotiations over the hostages that Hamas took on October 7th and also would allow for more aid to be allowed to be delivered to innocent civilians in Gaza. The sources say that Friday's release of two American hostages, Judith and Natalie Renan from outside Chicago, signaled that negotiators believe they could make progress on freeing some of the more than 200 hostages believed to be currently held by Hamas. Joining me now to discuss is the chairman of the House Select Committee on Intelligence, Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us. So two American hostages were released by Hamas. This is obviously a brutal terrorist group. They didn't release the hostages out of the goodness of their hearts or for humanitarian reasons. So why did they release the hostages? What did they get in exchange?
Well, certainly they're continuing to have negotiations and discussions, but what we're very aware of, which as you just noted, is, Hamas is a franchise of Iran. The brutal terrorist attacks that have occurred in Israel are going to result in Israel entering into Gaza and in taking this conflict to Hamas itself in order to diminish their ability to continue to threaten Israel. As we see that unfold, certainly getting humanitarian aid is important, getting the hostages back are important, and as there are opportunities that those break, certainly they need to be pursued. But the United States should not be dictating to Israel the prosecution of this conflict. They certainly are on the ground. They know the risks. They know the consequences. And certainly the United States supports their efforts to diminish this terrorist threat.
How involved were American officials in securing the release of these two American hostages? And are you optimistic more hostages might be released? Do you know how many more Americans are currently being held hostage in Gaza by Hamas?
Yeah, no, I would certainly say that Hamas needs to release all hostages, and certainly all American hostages. There are some reports that have been public that perhaps all of the Hamas leadership was not aware of the brutal terrorist attack that was going to occur into Israel, that may be some surprise in the leadership of Hamas that they now find themselves with tanks on their borders and a conflict going to ensue. And they may see that these hostages are an important opportunity to return them back to Israel and the United States so that they can get out of the way and hopefully address this issue of how will they move from a terrorist organization and state, a franchise of Iran, to an area where there can be peace.
So obviously, as the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, you're a member of the Gang of Eight. You get to see the very top classified intelligence. Who is responsible for the explosion at the Baptist Hospital in Gaza Tuesday, which the Palestinian Health Ministry, which is obviously controlled by Hamas, blamed on the Israelis, but U.S. intelligence seems to have concluded it was actually more likely to have been caused by Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Who is responsible according to the evidence you've seen, and how conclusive is that intelligence?
Well, my counterpart, ranking member Jim Himes from Connecticut, the two of us received a briefing that included not just the conclusions by the administration, but also the assessment. What was the process undertaken in order to determine that this was not the fault of Israel? And both of us concluded, in fact, we released a statement that we concur with the administration's conclusion that this was not a result of Israeli action.
There is a Democratic member of Congress who's out there still blaming it on Israel, and I've heard some members say that she should be briefed, and I'm wondering, is there an intelligence briefing being offered to members of Congress so that everyone can be informed as to what the latest information is?
Sure. Well, the administration's actually done a very good job of pulling together both the leadership in the House. We've been to the meeting with Jake Sullivan and the National Security Council and getting their information and get a briefing directly from him, plus all of the House of Representatives were called into a briefing where we both had the Office of Director of National Intelligence and the Department of Defense. So there's been a tremendous amount of effort to get information to members, and I think this is very important, as it has been in the Ukraine conflict, especially as the administration moves forward to look for an aid package to get through Congress for both the conflicts in Ukraine and Israel.
Based on what you know, do you think the Israelis are doing enough to protect the innocent civilians in Gaza? I'm sure you've heard Israeli leadership say that Palestinians are victims of Hamas as well.
And then they are. I mean, there's no question, there was an election in which Hamas, came to power in Gaza and then suspended all elections. And certainly the people in Gaza are captive to them. And there's certainly a brutal terrorist organization that is ruling that area. And I do think that the people and the Palestinians in Gaza are victims of them as well. Israel has done a great deal of effort to try to get people to move out of the way as they go in to try to remove Hamas and its ability to execute terrorist acts. This certainly is going to be very, very difficult. I do know that the United States is working both on the intelligence side and the strategy side with Israel to try to determine ways to increase the security of Palestinians in the area who are not involved in Hamas. But this is obviously going to be very, very difficult, and it goes both to the security and safety of the Palestinians and the Israelis that Hamas be removed.
President Biden just announced a $105 billion aid package for Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and the southern border. Obviously, the legislative branch of the United States government can't do anything until House Republicans pick a speaker. A, do you support the package? B, at what point does the dysfunction of your House Republicans jeopardize national security?
Right. I do support the package. I think it's incredibly important that we move forward to make certain that we stand up against the authoritarian regimes that are trying to undermine democracies that are our allies. I think also that we should be more focused on Russia as a threat to the United States than we have been, because this is not just an issue of Ukraine or not Ukraine. This is an issue of, Russia is our adversary, and they intend to do us and our allies harm. And of course, with Israel, this is one that has great clarity. We've all seen and have just, been saddened by the atrocities that we've seen and the need for addressing the issue of Hamas. With respect to the national security, clearly having a house that's not function is certainly a security threat for our country. This aid package, though, is not being delayed as a result of the House. At this point, the Senate has taken up this aid package. It looks like it'll be about 2 weeks before that package comes out of the Senate itself. And certainly we all hope we'll have a speaker by then.
There are 7 candidates so far for a speaker. Is there one that you particularly are leaning towards? And do you think that that person can get 217 votes?
Getting 217 is obviously going to be very difficult and is the sort of Rubik's Cube of the answer to all of this. I supported Kevin McCarthy. I supported Jim Jordan. I supported Scalise. I supported Jim on the floor also. I think we need to find someone who hopefully can get to 217 before we're all poised in very drama fashion on the House floor, trying to determine how this will unfold. I really hope in the next several days as we come together as a Republican caucus that we're able to resolve that so that we go unified to the House floor and deliver a speaker.
I hope you don't take this personally, but do you guys have any idea how clownish you look?
Well, Jake, I'm very fond of saying that Congress is a lot like high school, but even more so. So hopefully we'll get past this. And, I certainly have been part of the governing majority, and I'm going to stay part of that and look forward to those who are on the fringes hopefully coming together so that we can get a speaker.
I said that to Congressman Womack last week, high school, and he said that that's an insult to high school students. It's more like junior high. Congressman Turner, Chairman Turner, good to see you. I hope you guys pick a speaker sometime soon.
Great. Thanks, Jake.